So Professor Sky, who's a French professor who's got a YouTube channel, we've reacted to some of his stuff in the past. Shouts to Sky. He recently joined Curtis King TV, Curtis King's show, to talk about a handful of things, including one particular segment about white YouTubers and his belief in their role in the predominantly black hip-hop space and what that is. So let's watch this little thing and kind of interject as we go, and we'll talk about it a little bit deeper.
Okay.
There have been a lot of people who have taken advantage of this time period and happen to be, folks who don't look like the majority of the culture. And they've added their voice to the conversation. This is not one person, by the way. This is multiple people, by the way. It just seems like they lack a self-awareness. Instead of saying, like, I know I'm a white guy and I understand what the optics look like when you first see this. But by the end of this, you'll understand how tapped in I am, how much I'm willing to learn also in the process. How do you kind of see this in terms of the disconnect that some of the content creators and maybe even just commentators in general on the culture are having that happen to be in that category? Because this battle to me did more than just expose Drake. It exposed a lot of cognitive dissonance. Yes. And just a lot of just lack of self-awareness in people's roles as it pertains to hip hop as a culture.
It's a bigger question, right? Because there's the general question of how to be white in black spaces. And the main thing to understand is just never get comfortable, never think you belong anywhere, and always understand that you are a tourist. The battle, because it was so ubiquitous, I think a lot of people just sort of jumped into it. And I mean, I'm lucky, right? Like I'm 47. When I was 20, I was the kind of white guy where I wasn't in community. I'm sure if I had a camera on me when I was 20 years old and Drake came out, I probably would have not known all the things that I know now. I probably wouldn't have known to really understand my place is to not be comfortable. Like there are places where I'm comfortable on my channel. When I'm talking about Radiohead, I have no problem because those are a bunch of pasty white dudes who overthink and make weird stuff. Like systemic racism is a real thing. And there is a degree to which white men, even if they don't think it out loud, they do sort of feel that everything belongs to them. It's something that I don't like to admit. I don't like to say. But it's just true. That's sort of the way systemic racism works. Like the same way that men think that things should just go a certain way. So it's not surprising to me that people have a hard time when that's called out, because that's an uncomfortable thing to know. That's an uncomfortable thing to think. I don't like saying it out loud. I don't like it being true, but it's like, you have to constantly fight against it and constantly think about it.
So there's a lot being said there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Mikey,
what do you think about that?
Yes, white content creator in the hip hop space. What do you think about it?
It's cool. We actually have one.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So much so that I've already been materializing like a video to talk about this outside of this even. I'm going to talk about it tonight, but
yeah. It's
a very complicated conversation in general. I think there's a lot of truth in what he says. Obviously, I agree with almost everything of what Sky talks about in here in general. The part that I think I struggle with a little bit is the part where, and it's not even that I don't agree necessarily, but it's the part where I'm supposed to just always feel uncomfortable and always feel like I don't belong and that I'm always a tourist in that aspect. Even though I agree to one extent, there's a lot of thoughts that I have on that I have not fully materialized that are very complicated around that idea. So yeah, but that's in general how I feel. But in general, but also at the same time, like one thing that I have to constantly challenge myself on is, are my egoic feelings about me, a white person who did not grow up in hip hop culture, right? I didn't grow up in it. But the second half of my life, I feel like it's everything that encompasses me, no matter what I do. It's like, it's just what it is. It's the juxtaposition or the connectivity or it's like hip hop culture and black culture, right? I'm not black.
Right.
So that's that off bat, right?
Yep.
But then the question becomes, well, if hip hop is foundational black culture, which it is, has it turned into more so Americanized culture? Right. So there's that conversation as well. And then there's the whole part about being an MC, being a producer, being in all these spaces, doing all these things that I've done, and having the ego that comes with wanting to be proud to be a part of the things and the positive things that I'm doing within said thing, but also not by everybody, but in general, like this overarching message that I should not be necessarily proud of it, or that I have to, there's like a limit, there's like a cap in general. And to me, that is an ego type thing, which then goes into another whole conversation and thought pattern, which is around, does my own personal feelings of me wanting to be just normal in the space and just be a part of the thing that I'm a part of without having to be questioned all the time, is that just an ego thing? And at the same time, does it even really matter? Is it more important? Is the protective nature that people have over hip hop culture, is that more important than my egoic and my personal feelings? And I think that that's the case. And so that's what I wrestle with back and forth, of this place of where do I fit? Where do I align? You know, I feel like people that know me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, when you're out here in this space and you're having conversations and we're bantering about whatever we banter about and we talk about whatever we're talking about, when you do it in front of a camera, in front of a whole bunch of people that don't know you, don't know who you are, don't know any of your backstory or anything like that, you're automatically this to somebody. And it's what it is. I've accepted it, but it's also something that I am, to Sky's point, always conscious of. I'm always uncomfortable in that space. I'm always extremely aware and conscious of how I'm moving, the words that I say, how I interact in general, because I understand how things can be perceived and I understand where the spotlight is looking at me in a particular type of way.
I think I want to stay with the conversation about comfort, because that's one of the things that stood out to me, is when he said, you know, you don't want to get too comfortable. And I guess my thing is, there are examples of people that can get too comfortable and begin to misuse
For sure.
their said past, or however you want to word it, being able to be entered into the culture. There are plenty of instances where people misuse that due to a heightened level of being comfortable. So that was one thing that stuck out to me, because to your point, that's technically not fair. You want someone to pour into the culture, or give them access to pour into the culture, but you don't want them to be too comfortable while they're doing that. That doesn't make sense to me. But I also understand the flip side, because there are people that get very comfortable and totally abuse, said privilege.
And I think that's where that last piece of conversation where I talked about the ego versus the greater good, if you will. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm even different than Sky. Sky's like 4 or 5 years older than me. He's a French professor. He's never been an MC. He's never been a producer. He's literally a commentator. He's a fan. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm a fan too, but like, I've literally been doing this for 20, 25 years too, in different capacities. So even between him and I, we have a different type of, dynamic between us. But at the same time, I don't see a lot of people like Sky out there in this space as hip hop artists or as hip hop media commentators. Most people are what he kind of described to himself as like the 20 or 25-year-old, somebody who is operating in a space without really fully understanding a lot of the history or anything that goes into anything. And I think, and that's what I always end up leaning towards, of just being like, to his point, like always just embracing just being uncomfortable, because it's just kind of what it is, and the criticism and everything that comes with it.
I was just impressed with his level of accountability. For sure. Talking about Tim, but go ahead, Terry. I'm sorry.
I think he's coming with the difference between you and him is he's a historian, so to speak. So he does this from a respect for hip hop and not being a part of it, but he knows a lot of the history of it. I think that's the difference between him and you. You actually have an appreciation for it, and it's an embodiment of yourself. It's not an emulation. Whereas I think that some cats, like when you get involved with like the frat guy, that hip hop is a phase, and I feel like it's mine, and I feel like I can say all of these words, but I don't live this life. I go back to my suburban home, and I don't talk like for instance, it's the guy that walks up and says, "What's up, dog?" You know what I'm saying?
The T-dog.
Yeah, that person. but then you're somebody different elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think that's thinking
That's
that
true.
thinking that just being cool is part of hip hop is not where it's at. I think that's one of the things that agitates me. Now, there are some people that feel like they're supposed to be a torchbearer in the space, so to speak. And those people they rub me the wrong way too, because it's like you said, I think you can be a guest and still be a resident in the culture.
I always view it as I have a permanent spot in the guest house.
I think it's a little.
But that's the way I've always kind of viewed it. Is it's like I'm here, I'm just like, I'm not out in the front.
To Terry's point, though, when he just said you're a little bit more than that, it's because of what you've sown into it. So you've really actually sown stuff into the culture, like put forth effort to better yourself and teach others and produce and write and all. Like you're actually a part of it versus some people that are just kind of.
Some people exploit it.
And that's the word I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
That's what bothers me. Like, so you have people like Adam 22.
Yeah.
That I don't really know his history, but I know what he reports. His genre of hip hop that he reports on is not conducive to the culture. It does not bring the culture up
in a positive light.
Light.
It's just a profit off of it, essentially.
Exactly.
Facts.
That's all it is. It's a money grab. He has some friends that he's cool with and they make money off of allowing him to do that in their face, so to speak. Because they're there.
Yeah.
And he does it, and he's made a lot of money on this particular style of content.
Facts.
It's similar to academics. Academics isn't a white man, but he reported a whole lot on the war in Chirac. Never been to Chicago, doesn't really know the ins and outs of what actually happened, but he got his start, his fame from that particular type of content. And that's where the vulture thing comes in. I think when you're approaching it as somebody that wants to act like you're the champion out here of this said genre, as somebody white, that's when it turns into a vulture situation. That's when it turns into, I don't respect you, or I don't respect how you feel about certain things. There's been people that comment on some of our stuff that I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
You don't have a dog in this fight.
Facts.
You can be, like you say, being a guest in it and being welcome. I don't think that necessarily has to make you feel uncomfortable, though.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I would agree.
Because at the end of the day, and I've been speaking this a lot on hip hop in general, a lot of this has formed into American culture. So there's going to be some things that are going to apply to you regardless, because it's evolved. That's what things do. It's like, we all watched MTV before rap music was even on there. Mm-hmm. That's still a part of my culture. That's still a part of my upbringing. You know what I'm saying? I took something from that. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to be like that and emulate that, but it's still a part of what sewed me together. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like that, and I'll let you talk, Jay, but I feel like the uncomfortableness around it a lot of times is also understanding that there's responsibility, like a major level of responsibility of, sounds stupid, I don't know how else to word it, but not being one of those white dudes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Because there's a lot of those.
I know, but it's like
lots.
Trying to be a good example like trying to be something that people can especially white people. A lot of times when I speak on this stuff in general, like especially when I talk about like race relations stuff, I'm talking to white people in general, right? I'm not talking to black people. Black people,
100%, yeah, 100%.
So it's like I'm trying to be an example for how to react, how to, I don't know.
I'm gonna rephrase it for you.
That, though.
I'm gonna rephrase it for you.
And I don't want to center this conversation around myself.
This is just a general
white privilege.
we just have to use you as the example.
Yeah. We can't speak from this position.
Yeah, you're right here. So,
I think when you say trying, I think that you have to rephrase that as embodying I am. Because you live a certain type of way.
That's
it's
the
not
point.
Like you're not trying to live like somebody in the shadows, acting like this is you. This is you.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
That does not apply to you.
No, for sure. But at the same time, like I'm also somebody who's very conscious of the things that I say, right? And so there's different interpretations and there's different ways that I can say multiple things that can be interpreted in different types of ways depending on who's listening. And
Absolutely.
so I feel like there's just even more heightened importance for me.
What do we say a lot on this show as it relates to artists and their level of what? Caring. You care.
Right.
You care how you present yourself. You care about everything that you put your work, put your name on, and the brand that you built for bringing down the band, all the rest of that stuff. You care about it. So that's shown in the way that you move, in the way that you do content, in the way that you're on the show. And there's a lot of people out here that really just don't care. They're here to exploit, they're here to profit, and they're here to move on. Mm-hmm. And those are the cornballs. Those are the people that are actually just like Terry talked about with the vultures. Those are the people that we don't like. I'm talking about all of us, not us versus you. All of us.
I don't like them either. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So. That's what we not rocking with. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was thinking about just the word. It becomes trendy to say culture vultures.
Oh yeah.
But then when you realize what a vulture or a buzzard, if you will, depending on your regionality, is, it's picking at the carcass of something that is dead. Okay, and so I don't think that's really appropriate a lot of times. I think we could call these people interlopers, people who are involving themselves in things that they have no business in.
Smart.
I think, and that just doesn't apply. When this whole Drake Kendrick thing jumped off, there were people who quote unquote are, hip hop outlets, if you will.
Yeah.
Or maybe they might have created some of these outlets when the whole Drake and Kendrick thing kicked off. And I feel like some of those people were interlopers. They didn't have
That's actually what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The what's the dirt stuff.
That guy specifically.
And
which I don't even know, but I think he got his prominence through the Kendrick and Drake stuff.
He got it by being somebody that made content that he didn't really write. He's using bits and pieces from other people, creating his content.
Oh, I see.
And got very famous.
I try to stay away from the YouTube drama.
Popular from on YouTube by the Drake Kendrick drama. I see. So I think, that's kind of where I thought they were going, Jay, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. So I mean, and my whole thing is like I can have respect and love. Even when we talk about how hip hop is, foundational Black culture. If my whole thing is just with anything, this is across the board, whether, because like I said, I don't know what Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco and them are doing, what I'm saying? Like, and it says there was some crazy rock beef and I try to jump into that and say, I would be one, they would probably have to call me out as an interloper. Like, I don't know what they're really talking about, but if I'm just trying to get my views up, what I'm saying? Like, that's not cool, and my whole thing is, it's like, because we talk about people like academics and Adam 23 or whatever, and that's 22. I don't know.
25.
Whatever.
I don't know.
But I'm just saying that this is where I come at it from. Like, regardless of your upbringing, where you come from, because I'm very honest. Like, I don't come from the hard Scrabble streets of that birthed hip hop. Like, I am a Black child in the 80s of privilege. I grew up very Cosby-like, if you will. Let's say Huxtable-like. I'm not going to give him Cosby. Yeah.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
But the thing is, it's like anything that I've done, whether it's been the things I've written, my time in radio and records, the events I've hosted, is like I've tried to contribute to the culture and not just see what I can get out of it. And I think that's where there's a problem and where I call shenanigans. I try not to cuss. My mom watches the show from time to time.
Be careful now.
And, I see so many people, across cultures taking from hip hop and not giving anything back. There's always this thing. It's like, okay, we can come and we can be a part of the conversation and we can get our little jokes off. And like, I mean, it was kind of like we saw with Conan and like that, the situation earlier in the show. But at the same time, like, hey man, Conan has put people on his show, to where they may not have been anywhere else. And not just had them to perform, but sat down and talked to them. So, fine. Conan, do a joke. It's appropriate. And once again, we are talking about American culture at this point. If we wanted to just stay niche and not have anybody talk about our stuff, then let's not take all the rewards that come from being a part of American culture if we want to stay niche. You know what I'm saying? We'll take all the money. We'll take all the exposure to an international audience, but then when we want to feel slighted and say, no, this is ours and we just doing this over here. It doesn't work like that, especially if you're going to take the money.
It applies to certain individuals.
It does. And like I said, it's about the people who we just feel are taking. Every time I see you, you got your hand out. You're never putting back into the pot that is hip hop. You don't ever have anything particularly intelligent to say. I mean, not even about it. Ain't got to be intelligent when you're talking about someone's opinion,
Right.
You know. But sometimes we just get people who want to say, "Well, this is what I think," and it's like, "Yo, what if you contributed to where we should even care what you think?" You know, you just out here as somebody who's seeing what you can come in and get, and you know, when it's time to like really be down and really, it's time to really contribute something. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have time for that. You know, and like I said, that has nothing to do with color. You know, that's where a lot of times I feel like we get the game messed up because there are people who are contributing across the board, who are doing things, who are in it for the benefit, not only of the culture, but for the people who created the culture. And those are the people that I would rather listen to on a regular basis. But we have so many people who have not only they don't contribute anything, but they don't have any respect for where the culture comes from. And so that's where I have to kind of raise my eyebrow. And, you know, when I see these content creators, whether they be white, black, Hispanic, or anything else in between.
No, that's real.
It's almost like you can tell, though. Like you said, What the Dirt is a guy that Curtis King has had numerous videos calling him out. He also had an issue with company man Justin Hunt as well, because he called him out of his name.
That's where it kind of started, really.
Yeah, being somebody that isn't of the culture, that's where you overstepped your boundaries right there. Because you can't demean somebody that is part of the culture and say that you don't sound like you are the culture. And you pretty much got on by the Drake and Kendrick beef.
Right.
Now, we're fortunate enough to be a podcast that has been around before all of this jumped off. We are true torchbearers of the culture, so it was something that we were going to talk about regardless. It wasn't like we jumped into the YouTube space just because we seen what the numbers were doing.
Thank you for saying that.
That's exactly what happened with a lot of these content creators that don't even know what the culture is. They can't hold a conversation about anybody else in hip hop but Kendrick and Drake.
People
That's
sweat.
it. That's pretty much where the buck stops. So you can't say that you're part of something that you know nothing about and parade around like you are. And I think that's more so the type of person that they're talking about here. They're not talking about somebody that actually, you know what I'm saying, lives it, sleeps it, embodies it, has been a part of it. They're talking more so about the people that have their fishing poles out, and as soon as something bites that looks like it's popular to talk about, then they pull the pole up and put it out there. You know,
like just don't show up for the beef and the revelry that surrounds the beef, but like then when we want to have an intelligent conversation about, I don't know, just the detrimental, you know, effect that some of this music might have on our children and our communities, and then you have nothing to say about that, and even if you do have something to say, you have nothing constructive to add.
It's all surface material.
You know, you really can't dig deep into anything else other than the sensationalism. And you know, like as much as the Drake Kendrick thing, you know, it was culture, but it was sensationalism.
Yeah,
it was something that like we've talked about, but also we have hundreds of episodes where we did not talk about Drake and Kendrick. You know, and there's a lot of you who like, you just like, hey, it's like you keep poking a bear. It's like, hey, anybody else got any more diss tracks? And it's like, that's all you got to eat off of.
That's it. So if you had to talk about something else, you can't talk about it because you know nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? And he's also Canadian too. So.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a dirty foreigner.
What the dirt?
Brilliant. That's brilliant.